Jodio Joestar is the newest member of the Joestar family and protagonist of Part 9, the JoJoLands. And although the story has only just begun, we have already been introduced to a handful of mysteries surrounding its characters and plot, the most notable of which, in my opinion, is Jodio's mysterious father. So let's start with what we know about the Joestar family tree leading into Part 9's time skip. With Jodio's introduction to the alternate universe, he has pushed the JoJo's timeline into the early 2020s, taking place a whole decade after Part 8 JoJolian. Jodio lives in the islands of Hawaii with his older brother Dragona and mother Barbara Ann Joestar. His mother Barbara Ann is the daughter of Joseph Joestar, also known as Fumi-kun, who appeared in the Radio Gaga incident at the end of JoJolian, who is the grandson of Johnny Joestar, as shortly after Part 7, Johnny had married a Japanese woman, Rina Higashikata, and had their son George Joestar, who is the father of Joseph. In 1941, the Japanese-American Joseph, at the age of 17, would encounter a much older Lucy Steele in the town of Morio, another returning character from Steel Ball Run, who now works for the Speedwagon Foundation and was investigating the Rokakaka fruits in Japan. Upon realizing that Lucy was all by herself, Joseph decided to help her with her investigation, and after their bout with the Radio Gaga rock organism, Joseph would return to America with Lucy, as he was concerned about her worsening health and decided to accompany her on her travels. Although shortly after Lucy's return, Joseph would get stuck in America following the country's entrance into World War II and wouldn't be able to return until the war ended. During his time in America, Joseph worked as an assistant to Lucy and at a casino in Atlantic City, eventually earning citizenship, and during this time, Joseph would also meet a woman named Susie Q, who he married and had two daughters, Holly Joestar and Barbara Ann Joestar. Although at this point, there is some ambiguity in the timeline, as skipping forward about 40 years, Holly, as seen in JoJolian, lived in Japan, although Barbara Ann lived in Atlantic City and eventually moved to Honolulu, Hawaii with Jodio's father. So at some point, Joseph's daughters were separated. Either Holly moved to Japan as an adult after meeting a Japanese man, like the original universe's Holly, or for whatever reason, Joseph and Holly returned to Japan and left Barbara Ann in America. Although interestingly, it's specifically mentioned that Joseph worked in Atlantic City and that's where Barbara Ann lived. So maybe Joseph cheated on Susie Q and Barbara Ann was this illegitimate child. Although she keeps the Joestar last name, so that doesn't really add up unless Joseph was living this double life with Susie Q in New York and Barbara Ann's mother in Atlantic City. I'm sorry, Joseph, you're never gonna beat the allegations, and I'm just gonna assume he cheated on his wife in every timeline. But whatever happened with their family isn't really important for this video, as we've now reached the point in the timeline where Jodio's story begins. And with the name Jodio and what we've come to know about this character throughout the JoJoLands, we have to talk about this kid's dad, as Jodio's father is most likely a Brando, being a relative or descendant of Diego Brando from all the way back in Steel Ball Run. The first piece of evidence for this theory is most obviously Jodio's name, which is some pretty obvious foreshadowing as he is half Joestar, half Dio. And this combination of Joestar and Dio is further vindicated by the JoJoLands' abundant paralleling of Part 5, Golden Wind, which followed the story of an Italian gangstar, Giorno Giovanna, who was also a mix between Joestar and Brando, being the son of Dio after he had stolen Jonathan's body, making Giorno's personality a mix between the characters, as Giorno can be said to have the heart of Jonathan but the mind of Dio, as Giorno was undoubtedly a virtuous character. He stood up against evil, fought for what was right, and used his position and power as a mob boss to bring peace and justice to his homeland. Although what it took to get there wouldn't have been possible without the Brando blood within him. It's the same blood of Dio which made Giorno take the initiative in his story, to see the world around him as a place he disagreed with and have the ambition to change that world, just like Dio aspired to do throughout Phantom Blood, Stardust Crusaders, and in Spirit, Stone Ocean. The Dio side of Giorno is also seen through the mentality he carried throughout the part, the quiet and calculated, methodical thinking it took to win many of his battles and achieve his dream, having an almost psychopathic personality at times, as Giorno often finished his battles in a brutal fashion, like his infamous 7-page Muda. And in his final fight, Giorno casted divine retribution onto Diavolo, trapping him powerless in a loop of death for eternity. So if that's not Dio levels of sadistic, I don't know what is. So bringing things back to Jodio, even though we are currently only 3 chapters into the JoJoLands, he's very clearly the alternate universe equivalent of Giorno. Starting with character design, they both have heart motifs on their chests. Jodio also has wings, which are seen on Giorno's Gold Experience, and their banes are made up of 3 distinct pieces, Giorno with his donut curls and Jodio's 3 flaps of hair. But these were all connections we made before the part even started. So more importantly than their designs are the similarities in their stories, as they are both criminals involved in the underbelly of of society, Giorno being a part of the Italian mafia, Passione, and Jodio having his own gang of sorts with his brother Jagona, under the authority of their boss Meryl May Q, which includes him transporting and dealing drugs and stealing from unsuspected tourists in Hawaii. And if you've been reading the JoJoLands, it's just all around huge Golden Wind vibes, which seems to be the recreation Araki is going for with this part, as Steel Ball Run recreated elements from Phantom Blood and JoJolion from Diamond is Unbreakable. So obviously in part 9, Araki is trying to recapture the elements of crime found in Golden Wind, and certain aspects of Giorno's character. But as we've seen, Jodio is by no means a carbon copy of Giorno. In fact, he's almost the complete opposite in terms of his morality, as Jodio has no problem dealing drugs to his fellow classmates or seem to have any concern whose hands they end up in, which is something Giorno disdained. As well as Jodio, as of right now, doesn't have some altruistic goal in mind. He's talked about seeking mechanisms, whatever that may be, and how he's going to become filthy rich, but it's all framed in a rather selfish perspective, and the only time Jodio has shown concern for other people is for his family, only going out of his way to protect his brother and mother. But the most concerning aspect of Jodio is his lack of empathy, as he can't control his actions and completely lacks a guilty conscience or feeling of remorse. It was even suggested by Jodio's psychotherapy doctor that he may have antisocial personality disorder, which would make him an actual psychopath, which brings everything back to Jodio's father, as although the Joestars from the alternate universe are generally more unhinged than the previous parts, like Kira's general lack of empathy and Johnny and Josuke's dark determination, they are still overall virtuous characters with a great amount of empathy and compassion for others, especially Jodio's grandfather, Joseph, who from what we've seen was an extremely empathetic character, going out of his way to help Lucy time and time again, and would go on to have a family of his own and two wonderful daughters, Barbara Ann and Holly. So I'm doubtful that Jodio inherited these psychopathic tendencies from the Joestar part of his family, as in order to be a main JoJo, he needs to have some sense of justice, even if it's unveiled along the way. That's just what it means to be a Joestar. So if Jodio inherited the Dio side of him from his mysterious father, let's try to find more about who he could possibly be. The first thing we know is that Jodio's father met Barbara Ann in Atlantic City, so unless he was just visiting, he's most likely American. The two then moved to Hawaii and had two children, Dragona and Jodio, but at some point, quote, a bunch of stuff went down with Jodio's mother and father, and since then, Barbara Ann has been raising her kids alone. So from this limited information, we can still draw a few assumptions. Continuing on the theory that the father is a Brando, this is aided by the fact that Jodio's parents separated, as in both Phantom Blood and Steel Ball Run, the father figure, Dario Brando, were terrible parents. Phantom Blood Dario being an abusive alcoholic thief who drove his wife to an early death by overworking her and just generally being an awful person. And Steel Ball Run Dario was nearly the exact same, if not worse. An abusive alcoholic with no regard for anyone but himself, who tried to bury his own newborn child, Diego Brando, to avoid responsibility. And then when his wife tried to save the child, he hit her to the ground and abandoned the two, thinking they would both die when swept up by a rushing current. So the Brando fathers are known to either abandon their children or treat them horribly. And from Jodio and his brother Dragona's questionable morals, a negative father figure may have played a part in their development. So all signs point to Brando, and while the prospect of a Diego descendant in the year 2020 is cool as fuck, from what we know in Steel Ball Run, Diego had unfortunately met an early death, so it's unlikely that he had any direct descendants, as he died at the age of 20, although he was married a year before the Steel Ball Run to an 83-year-old widow who ended up dying 6 months into their marriage, so it's pretty obvious that Diego was just trying to secure the bag of her inheritance, and it would have been impossible for them to have a child anyways. So unless Diego was with someone earlier than that, I guess it is possible for him to have a child out there somewhere, but just unlikely. But there is of course the possibility of there being an entire part of the Brando bloodline that we've just never seen before. Either Dario had more children or he had brothers and sisters, so it's completely possible for there to still be a Brando bloodline reaching modern day, and some of them ending up in America. Although what made Giorno's connection to Dio so significant and special is that we knew Dio and we had seen his life before, so it just wouldn't be as impactful if Jodio's father wasn't a descendant of Diego and just some other random Brando. But I guess it would still be cool, call back to Giorno and get the point across. So So I would really expect at some point in the JoJoLands, Jodio's father to be mentioned again or even brought back into the picture, as based off of what Jodio has said, it's assumed that his father is still living in Hawaii, just separated from the family. So maybe at some point there will be an arc that involves a whole backstory about their dad and why they ended up moving to Hawaii in the first place, as there must have been a reason for such a big move. And if Jodio is truly going to be the alternate Giorno, one of the biggest parts of Giorno's character was the significance of his father and how it was Dio. So for Jodio to fill that role, we just have to find out this guy's dad at some point. And touching on Jodio's motive again, no other Joestar has had the ambition to become filthy rich, as Jodio describes it, almost like an unethical amount of wealth, which aligns with the other motives we've seen from the Brandos, as it seems Brando blood has an innate desire to rise from the bottom, to show the world that they are superior to everyone else and reach the highest peak. As Phantom Blood Dio threw away his humanity to become immortal and stronger than any human, who would then obtain the world and strive for the Heaven Plan, which was essentially to become God, and change the design of the world and all life. While Giorno went from poverty to the boss of the Italian mafia, and Diego wanted to win the Steel Ball Run to climb to the top of society. So you're seeing the theme here, and I can only expect Jodio to go on a similar journey, starting out as a simple gopher and drug dealer, but going on to build an empire of wealth he couldn't possibly imagine. So as of right now, that is about every single piece of information we know and inference we can make towards Jodio's father, which even only 3 chapters into the JoJoLands, Araki is putting a lot of emphasis on Jodio's character and relating it to the Brandos from previous parts. So let me know what you guys think about Jodio and who his father could possibly be in the comments down below, and I'll see if I missed anything. As well as please be sure to subscribe to the channel for more JoJoLands content and monthly reviews, as I noticed that 81% of my viewers in the last 30 days aren't subscribed, so especially if you made it to the end of the video, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Thank you all so much for watching, like the video if you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in my next video. Peace!